sort of never get opportunities laid on a clean table and say, pick one, two, three. The closer you are to how business making money, more valuable you are. Everyone has to get off this hurry or the urgency to nail it, too soon. Opposite to what seems on the face of it, people don't buy just for price. As a startup, you will hire people who do not have that level of expertise. They fill that gap between the founder, CEO, and the team.
Hey Rajesh, thanks for your time and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
So, Rajesh, the first question I usually ask everybody is how did you stumble upon marketing? When is it that you decided that's a career choice you want to make?
I graduated as a mechanical engineer. I joined a material handling company, and I had a choice between working in the factory and getting exposed to the commercial function. So I got into the commercial function, which involved sales and exports, which I started liking. And for some reason, they called that function that time marketing. So I
Uh-huh.
was called a marketing engineer. So I realized later it wasn't marketing; I was selling. And but I like the idea of working with people, engaging with people versus working in the back end.
Mhm.
So I did that for a few years, and then I decided to, do a business master's program. So that's when I sort of got to know more about it and interested it. And so in general, I think the creativity fascinated me, and the idea of working with people fascinated me. So those together seemed like marketing was a good place to be in. And watching all the advertising around us, and so much of creativity applied. I think I think that was the turning point, and gradually I ended up going in that direction.
Fantastic. I want to follow up on that. I think so often I see people assuming that marketing is creative or marketing is data driven, you know. And I have friends who tell me, "Yeah, I don't like numbers, so I don't think marketing is for me," or I don't like creative, or I'm not traditionally creative in the craft sense of it, so I don't think marketing is for me. So, as somebody who's seen marketing evolve drastically, from it being marketing engineer to now there being such specific roles available, what's your advice here? Do you think that who is marketing for? If you could kind of give your 2 cents on that.
I think it's both. To me, marketing is creativity applied for a commercial cause, right? It involves investing resources, time, money. So there is somebody expecting return at the end of it. So I think it's not pure creativity. Then I'll be in art, and which I enjoy, but that's not marketing. But also, I think it's not all numbers and science. Then just the computers would do it.
Hmm.
So, so I think the creativity starts where numbers finish.
Hmm.
So numbers give you the logic and the rational and help you zero down where, what, and how you want to apply. But the that the last part which makes the difference then is the creativity, because we are in the business of delighting people, engaging people, you know getting their heart. And when you are in business, then heart and mind. I think root to mind is why the heart. And I think people once, and I often feel people decide from their heart and then they justify with their mind.
Awesome. I think I'm going to definitely quote you there on quite a few things. Last bit here, So I have interviewed so many, marketing leadership in this podcast, and one thing I've realized is a lot of people have a similar journey like you, where they do engineering usually, and their work exposes them to this aspect, and then you build up your career. But as you know, today it's really competitive. If I'm not wrong, I think we're still every year breaking records of admissions in MBAs. What's your outlook towards education in marketing, like formal education, like when you're building a team and you've built it so often for so many companies, do you give a preference to somebody who comes with a certain formal background, or is it not as important as people think?
I think, like in life, there isn't a recipe. Some people may not get it despite best of the formal education, and some
Mhm.
people may inherently get it without having that. So I think marketing is a very broad field. So more you know, more you learn, better it is. So as diversified in your knowledge and experiences you are, I think better you are, because you work
Mhm.
very close to people. More diversified way in which you understand people, how they think, how they operate, what makes them buy, better off you are. In general, I think education really helps, because at some level I could argue marketing and overall management is common sense. It will
Mhm.
probably take me 25 years to figure that out. If I can benefit of the collected wisdom of people in a 2 year time frame, that sets me ahead of the curve and I can start from there. So that's my take. I mean, I think education, everything is an indicator. It helps
Mhm.
you trim the list of people you want to meet. But as years go by, then education, experience, what people have done, what they've accomplished, what they've been through, is what fits them into a specific role or a situation. And nowadays so many things are changing. There is no recipe. I mean, a couple of years ago we said everybody must learn coding,
Mhm.
because we want to learn how computers, want to talk to us, and our computers are trying to learn how we want to talk.
Right.
So it's now suddenly the focus is on knowing better language and being able to communicate what you want, and that's called now become prompt engineering and so on. So, so it's keep changing. I don't think there is. So therefore also, it doesn't stop. So
Mhm.
wherever whatever you do, I think the whole DNA to keep yourself current and keep learning, trying, doing new things, I think that's important, and that probably differentiates people in all walks, but I think more
Mhm.
importantly in marketing.
Got it. Today, if I'm a young professional who's just come out of college, or let's say I've developed a skill, I get offers from a established brand, I get offers from a young startup, and there's also the agency side, brand side conversation, and there's also the पहले sales करो for marketing या फिर directly jump into marketing. So there's so many options which are available as to what should I do as my first job. If you were able to kind of go back in time, what would you pick as the first opportunity?
So here is how I think about it. One, at least in my experience, you sort of never get opportunities laid in a clean table and say pick one, two, three. Things come when they come, and it's a timing, right? And there's a short window for you to pick. So I've generally tended to flow with the things, and they've
Mhm.
kind of worked out. Right? Second, I think, like I said, whether it's sales, marketing, is for the cause of business. So more importantly, we have to understand how business happens. And in the business world, how money is made. So whatever function you do, closer you are to how business making money, more valuable you are. Right.
Mhm.
So to me, I think to that extent, understanding sales, understanding different functions in the company is important. And that's where we said a formal education kind of helps. It exposes you how do pieces come together. That sets the context. Sales is important. I think it's good to do. I have done do for a while, understand how the last mile sort of happens, and then within marketing, I would think as much as you're able to get a broad experience of different sides,
Mhm.
that's going to help you, because the I think one has to, and this is in hindsight, one has to get off this hurry or the urgency to nail it, too soon. Because I think a lot of these things are lateral. What comes in the way is they are not necessarily incremental up. So one doesn't see and say, okay, I've done this, now I must go next step in the same stream. I think if you look at agency side, getting to know how agency works and how you can subsequently be a good client, super important, right? Then
Nice.
startups, gives you very broad exposure and very close to business. Whereas in a larger company, how do you scale? How do you work with systems? How do you work across boundaries? And large companies have huge pools of talent, significant amount of resources, which in a startup you don't have. So you get
Right.
to do many things that you don't get to do in a startup.
mm,
right? So startup will become a large company one day. So if you have been there, done that, that helps you see the way. But at the same time, too long in a large company, you get very driven by the system rather than driving the system. So startup brings that, in your mind to question the status quo and how things can be done simpler, quicker, better. So I think a taste of all of those things then sets you up to do much better, and also be more understanding of people around you, because I think eventually you probably will be running a team.
mm.
And so I think of the marketer should be a business person with expertise in the craft of marketing.
Well put. You unpacked every path, so I really appreciate that. I think it'll be super useful. I want to now jump into B2B marketing. It's something you are very passionate about. You've aced that over the last several years. I want to know, I mean, why is it so? Traditionally, what had happened is B2B enterprise was sales driven. And if I look at, the last 15, 20 years, it's only recently where there's been a lot of companies doubling down on B2B marketing. And, I have also done a course recently, and it was about growth marketing. And in my entire cohort, like 90% of the people are here because marketing means, performance and product marketing and all that. Less than 10% of the cohort was into B2B. But as we know, India is wanting to become a huge player in SaaS. There any which way is fantastic in IT. There's so much happening in B2B today that I feel that a lot of companies are investing suddenly into marketing teams. So could you unpack for me why is marketing suddenly becoming so important for B2B companies?
I mean, this is actually a little bit of a unsolved piece in my mind also. When I did went to go when I went to business school, more than 25 years ago, there wasn't a dedicated course on B2B marketing. We all studied sales and distribution, advertising, media, channel marketing, international marketing, and so on and so forth. And a few years ago, I went back to my alma mater talking about careers in marketing. I was amazed. There is still no course, and B2B is three times the business size in terms of transaction value to B2C.
Right.
I stumbled into this accidentally. I was selling material handling, then I went to sell alcohol, I sold confectionery. Then first .com, I jumped onto a tech startup, where I was doing marketing, consumer B2C. And then that kind of, folded up. So my first job was, a tech company. And I was an experiment because they were starting small and medium businesses. They said, oh, somebody coming from consumer will probably understand. So it took me like, almost a year to unpack how to apply marketing here.
Hmm,
So,
hmm,
fundamental principles don't change, but the context sort of changes.
hmm,
And B2B for long believed that, all people wanted was something superior on specifications. So they will make their data sheet, they'll put those three data sheets next to each other and say, I am better on 8 or 10 counts, so you buy me.
hmm,
Right. But I think as the function has deepened, as market has gotten crowded with more solutions and offerings, and more parity among them has come. Right? People have, and also I think as more talent has come into this, like this was best secret hidden away. You know, nobody hired for B2B marketing in campuses. There was no courses, so people somehow stumbled like that. Either salespeople converted to marketing, or somebody came from agency. So when I looked at like that, there was not really a conscious effort as
hmm,
much,
hmm,
right?
hmm,
So I think as things have changed, market has matured, people have realized, that just like in consumer marketing, in B2B also, there is a large, you know, emotional part involved in buying. Consumer may buy something because taste is better, or he or she looks good, or their family will like it, and so on. But as much in B2B, people make as much decision for the company, but as much to build their professional reputation, as much to grow their expertise, as much to grow their career in the company. And these are big, important, expensive decisions. When you buy $1 million machinery or software, if you make a wrong decision, it'll cost you your career.
right.
People will go with the organization or a company or a brand they trust, even if the other company is looking a little bit better on the specifications or price. So just opposite to what seems on the face of it, people don't buy just for price. People don't buy the cheapest product with best specs. People buy a product they feel comfortable and safe with to bet their life and their career on. So it is as important. But I think I'm glad it's now coming into the front. So coming back to your question, I think every new shiny object that comes to town attracts people, and everybody wants to make a quick return out of it. So you become a performance marketer. A few years ago as a digital marketer, social media marketer. But you go back to what we said earlier. Eventually you're trying to help do business, and then you're trying to help do marketing. So the overall construct and the context is important. So once you get that, then these pieces fit in, and these pieces keep changing. So you do need, what they call classically a T profile. You need super specialization maybe in a few things, but you
Hmm.
need to understand the overall discipline of marketing, and you need to understand or grow your understanding of business over a period of time. I
Hmm.
think that's what sort of makes each of us valuable and keeps us relevant over a period of time. Sorry,
You know,
long answer, but hopefully that,
I
I answered your question.
you definitely did. I think you made a very interesting point about this relationship aspect. Ki our emotions are so important. I mean, as somebody who does sales in my company, I can tell you the relationship you have to build with your client is so important for conversion, because you may, have a lot of credibility built through whatever your company does. But at the end of the day, I'm shaking my hand with a person, and if that person gets me or not is so crucial. At least sales has taught that to me a lot, and I think since a salesman can't be at every door in B2B, marketing really has to look at doing that at scale. So I absolutely agree with where you're coming.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, people buy you. People
yeah,
buy you as much, they buy the product. Actually, more than the product, because
yeah,
if the product, the solution fails or they have a trouble, they want to know who to call and who'll stand by
correct,
them.
correct.
Right? If you're that person, they'll take the risk.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another thing in B2B marketing is everybody talks about building a growth engine, a content engine, etc., etc. And I know you've done that quite a few times. So, what does an ideal growth engine look like for a B2B company?
I think I'm again, I think I'm glad we set up this context earlier. I'm going back to the thing. I think it's horses for courses, right? First you have to figure out the context of your business. What does your business do? What do you need? And therefore, what does growth mean? Does growth mean going to new territories? Does growth mean getting a lot of new customers? Does growth mean selling more to existing customers? What industry they are in? Who's buying? What's their persona? What's the buying cycle? What's the buying decision making? Is it recurring business? And so on and so forth, right? And then you figure out what is it that marketing needs to provide to business, right? And then you figure out what fits in those pieces. You can't put a cart before the horse, because content can mean many things. Content can mean your social posts, but content can mean blogs. Content can mean authored articles. Content can mean research report. Now, depending on who you're talking to, because people, and typically in a B2B, the higher you go in the value chain to sell to,
Mhm.
you know less time they have. So if you can, it's the same psychology of consumer marketing, 30-second commercial, 15-second commercial. If you can capture their attention and mind with something that is talking to what they potentially may be looking for and are receptive to, you've done your job. Because then probably
Mhm.
pass the bait to somebody else and say, look, this looks interesting, can you go find out more? So
Mhm.
if I put like my complicated technological pitch, they'll probably just switch off. And also I think a lot of the, at least I think I have seen in the current generation of senior decision makers, not everyone is as receptive or as you know hands on digital.
Mm.
So digital is not necessarily the 100% answer. At max, they probably brush through LinkedIn, and in some cases, don't know if the CEO or she's a CEO is probably managed by somebody else. So they don't even see it. So maybe they still read a Economist, or they still read a Wall Street Journal or a Economic Times. They still prefer meeting friends over a drink in a bar or whatever, or a meal. So how can see? Question is not attracting them to where you are. Question is going where they are.
Mhm.
Sometimes understanding that unpacks a lot,
Mm. Mm.
and what will make them look at what you have to offer. They have zillion
Mhm.
things competing for their attention.
Mhm.
So what will make it play to their priorities is what makes the difference. So I think in that context, if you look at it, it just sort of, it's a different way of thinking.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that tends to help, when you're in a situation of, in terms of not doing more or many different things or a lot of things, but figuring out what really counts and where should you put your, money, effort, and resources behind. Because in a real situation, you'll always have a challenge of, trade-off.
Right. I think, attention is going away, as you said, and today, I mean, I wouldn't say today, it's like a really old thing now, but it's still pretty relevant, which is video is so effective, especially in B2C or any, format you talk about. But when you talk about, when if I Google content or growth engine for B2B, brochure banana hai, decks banana hai is what people usually think. Um, do you see even B2B now being more receptive to things like a video interactive website, or is it still traditionally like send me a creds deck and I'll take it up?
I mean, we like watching OTT more than books, right? So it's a no-brainer, right? Anything which engages more of your senses is going to work better. You know, like your posts with visuals will do better. Video will do better than static content. Now, but question is that what is in that video that is going to engage that person? Not all videos do well. Not all movies do well. Right?
Right.
So, what's your angle to storytelling, and why should they care? Right. So now, like I said, it depends if this person, that you're trying to reach, or, there is no one answer or one size that fits all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you have to actually really look at who, because maybe it's a great video, but its utility is only when you're doing a CEO roundtable for that 2 hours or five of those roundtables. Maybe it's not as effective if you put it for a mass media, and so on. Right? So I think, who
Right.
do you want to reach? What's the setting you are able to access them in? Is it
Right.
physical? Is it online? And then, what do they read, where they are? And then how can you make that point in a most engaging and, quickest way? So, and
Understood.
then a lot
Understood.
of your messaging will get decided by the mood of that medium. If they're reading a HBR, then mood is different. If they're on a TED site watching a TED talk, the mood is different. Unlikely your business message will make sense on a Facebook or a Insta situation for a business message, maybe culture message, depending on the nature of business. So I think then the best way to tell it. Now again, there are complexities of multiple cultures, and what is efficient, what is cost effective, etc., etc. Maybe illustration and animated videos is the answer, but
Mm.
eventually I think it's a tool to doing something. Right? It's
Right.
not an answer in itself. So to me, content marketing is not I made 500 videos last year and turned everything from text to video. But to me is, we made three impactful things which tells the story of our company and our business, and I don't have to explain after that. So
Fantastic.
sometimes, if you have a huge conference and you do make a great, 1 minute, 2 minute video, which everybody, since you have them captive, sees and
Mm-hmm.
feels the might or the power of what you're trying to do, that's great marketing. Maybe that's your
Mm-hmm.
brand, doesn't add to your leads directly or your demand directly, but it will. Right? But when you're doing things like how to get out of your product, or troubleshooting and things like that, or enabling or training people, video is fantastic. But in a situation where salespeople are presenting in a boardroom, I think great slides. Slides to me is very underutilized medium.
So I wanted to, now ask you a question which I often get as somebody who does marketing and sales also, in the company, which is at Indifolio, we throw a wide net. Being a function, we are, useful for a chunk of industries, and we've been doing it for 10 plus years. And I send a couple of lakh emails every quarter. So today it's pretty significantly challenging for my team to come to me and be like, "Arey, Kavan, I'm not able to find good companies every week, every month." And if you were to take Lentra's example, or even in fact UiPath, you're selling very specific, expensive services to a very focused group of people. Like in Lentra, it's banks. So in a market like this, where you are only tapping into, let's say, a handful of customers, how does the marketing strategy function? How do you make sure that you're not saying the same thing again and boring your potential customers? And how does really marketing come into play to attract a small group? Because usually people say scale, scale, scale. Here it's, I wouldn't say it's the opposite, but it does seem very different as compared to talking to millions of people.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think firstly, marketing strategy follows business strategy. If business doesn't have a clear strategy, marketing cannot solve it. Right? Marketing can help drive it, but you need a business strategy. Then more expensive and more difficult product you're trying to sell to more inaccessible audience and companies, more difficult it is. So
Right.
that's why your science and creativity both come into being.
Hmm.
And one thing you have to watch out for is that how to sidestep the popular way of thinking.
Mhm.
you know Everyone, including us, we get caught by the terms. Either it's leads, demand generation. You talk to 100 people, 99.9 will say, oh, I don't get enough leads. So in this context, the approach is what is loosely termed as account based marketing.
Mhm.
But again, don't get caught by the term. Put simplistically, there are a few accounts that are inordinately important to you. They're a make or a break, right? So therefore you spend a lot of time understanding them and going deeper to fathom what they are buying, when they are buying, why they are buying, who's buying, what are the different roles in buying within the organization, what do those people typically look or feel like, what would motivate them, and what are their watering holes, what will be a good way to access them, and how can I move up through that decision making chain, right? So there is fair amount of complexity in that, right? So it's not sort of that simple. And to your point, if you have a very broad set of people who can use your services, maybe you need to segment it. It's not the same answer for everyone. And then after you
Right.
segment, you have to choose, because you can choose to spread yourself thin trying to do a lot of things, or you can go after a few that have a larger share in what you do. And your strategy may change. Maybe you're very early in the market, you say, I will take some low lying fruit and then make them successful, and that becomes my proof of concept in the market. And then I will gradually move up the value chain, because the most biggest buyer may not buy from your day one, right? But as you traverse that journey, you start driving focus. But the beauty of this is that once you make that entry and actually deliver your promise, these customers are going to be with you for a very long time. And your business
Mhm.
will expand within that function, across other teams in that organization, across other geographies, and so on and so forth. So you will not possibly need to look for that long tail.
Mhm.
So that's why the nature of this is different. Now within the company, how will you reach a CEO, how will you reach a CIO, how will you reach a head of marketing, head of sales, head of tech, probably will be quite different. and they may all
Mm-hmm.
warm up to different flavors of that message, even within the team. In the marketing
Mm-hmm.
team, if you're selling, the somebody may warm up to the idea of lower cost, quick turnaround, person available on call. Somebody else may be motivated by the idea you are an agency that thinks ahead of the curve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And have done some new age work, or you are better skilled in new technologies and so on and so forth. So probably
Mm-hmm.
something like that, because I think B2B relationships are for a very long time. So
Mm-hmm.
once you get them, it makes sense to go deeper and make it sticky and monetize and expand it. Because generally business will grow, their marketing spend will grow, and then those people will move. They will, if you've done great work and you've demonstrated, people will take you where they go. Because everybody is not wanting to reinvent the wheel every time they start. They have enough other things to
Mm-hmm.
tackle. Right. So that's sort of the counter, I would say. I mean, when people come and say, "Oh, I don't get leads," the question is why you don't get leads. It's not that you don't get leads. Just by knocking on somebody's door again and again, or calling them, or sending them emails, they won't warm up to you. At best, they will be turned off.
Right.
They put you in spam. You know,
Right.
but if they do, they know you even. Do they know you? Do they recognize you? Do they know what you stand for? And do they know
Mm-hmm.
why they should even think of you? Then when they are buying, they will call you to the party. But most cases, the focus, because of various pressures of revenue, time, investor, even startups, everybody is saying, "Oh, I don't get leads." You imagine when
Right.
you're driving a car, you're at the traffic signal, somebody is trying to sell to you. Once in a while, you may say because it doesn't matter, but that's now how you're going to buy something important to you. You will
Correct.
shop for it.
Correct.
So it's just like leads is
Correct.
akin to that strategy versus, you know,
I think ABM is so underrated. In fact, because I'm in B2B and we've shifted our focus to enterprises for the last 2 3 years, is where I stumbled upon it. I feel it's such an interesting, in-depth aspect there. I wanted to follow up on personalization there, because I wanted to know like how much personalization is required, right? Because I see some examples, especially a lot of documentation in America where people have gone beyond what you'd conventionally even think of for ABM, where, as you said, the entire buying committee gets like a 1:1 personalized campaign for the entire year. But then you also see people doing segmentation or industry based personalization. So um, how do you go about personalization in a account based marketing strategy?
see, you can go to any extent, right? There is no end to creativity and, how much you can. But if you again come back to your design principle, what is the account worth now and over a
Mhm.
lifetime? And what percentage of that you are willing to or are able to invest in building up that account? Right?
Hmm.
That decides how deep, how personalized you can go. Right? And then based on that, you do 1:1, or 1:few, or 1:many.
Hmm.
Right? So when you hear from US, don't forget 300 of the Fortune 500 sit in the US. If that account is
Right.
buying $10 million from you in a year, you probably will be able to invest a lot more. But if your account
Got it.
is 100,000, then you can only spend so much. So you have to be mindful of that as well, and then say how you want to tackle it at what level. Then it's a function of how many such accounts.
Hmm.
Because I think sometimes the terminology and the tends to make it sound more difficult than it is.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
probably intuitively will do that. For example, if you're saying these are my top 10 accounts, I will keep track of what their business is doing. I will keep track of key decision makers, where they are, where they are going. So many of those things are intuitive.
Hmm.
And in a country like ours, where there is a lot of talent available, and we have some benefit of cost arbitrage, maybe you can just put some smart young people to track your key decision makers, engage them on social media, maybe engage them, track which conferences, events they are at, where they are speaking, what they are writing, what they care about, what are their maybe interests a bit beyond work, and see what affords you opportunity to make your brand presence felt,
Hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can you get some of their mind share,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So, sometimes that's why I feel a bit skeptical of all the terminologies. In reality, things are not as difficult or as complicated. But,
Right.
once, because, anybody does ABM, then they become ABM agency or ABM expert. And then they start selling that. But conceptually simple. I mean, you have top 10 accounts, for you as a agency, founder. If you tap these people at, say, top three conferences
Mm,
or events of the year, and
mm,
actually go get involved rather than just making a flying visit, maybe in the organization, maybe on a panel, maybe, spend some quality time there, and then get to know
mm,
these people, and get them to know you for how you add value or what you bring to the table. Then your relationship will grow, and then they will call you to the thing, and so on and so forth. So that's sort of the simplistic way of I have, looking at it, because many things that work in larger markets, because of cost complexity, are not cannot be rolled out in the market here as they are in the Western world.
correct.
But you can pick the principle and the rationale and apply it to what you're doing. And there are enough people who provide you that help and service at, models and costs that work for this market.
I wanted to touch upon the events and experiential marketing aspect you spoke about. You've done that in the past. I believe even for SAP quite a bit as per your LinkedIn. Um, I think doing an event or a conference is something which a lot of B2B marketing teams or even founders think, but they always get stuck when the leadership asks them to define some kind of an ROI to it. And usually B2B companies are so used to immediate numbers and sales, it's difficult for them to plan out for an experiential marketing campaign, right? So could you kind of help the viewers understand how do you go about doing, let's say, an event, and how do you end up even testing that if it succeeded or not? Is it revenue? Is it awareness? Is it leads? I'd love to know more.
It's a good question, but I'm going to go back to again design principle. You have to first ask, what are we trying to get done,
Right.
and what is the right answer. So that's why there are roles like event marketing, event management. Those you need operationally, but those are not an answer in itself. So if I'm a, for example, if I'm a new company, people don't know me, right? And so maybe doing a big bang large event to engage key decision makers, key influencers, key regulators, and make my presence felt. Event is the answer, you know. But that may not be the event that immediately drives your sales. That is an event that makes people see that you are here, and you have certain size, strength, finesse, skills that you bring for their benefit, right? It's just
Hmm.
like making your presence felt. It's like your launch ad campaign for a new consumer brand. It's like the first ad Pepsi did when they entered India market, right? See, because in a focused B2B business, too much spillage if you do advertising.
Hmm.
But if you bring it form of an event and use that day or half day to deliver that experience, that is probably going to get you a lot of mind share. And then there is a run up to it, during it, after it. So event is not a is just a component. So there are other things. How do you match to digital, social, PR, comms, analyst relations, different stakeholders that you, because it's like a platform. What do you want to get done with it?
Hmm.
And then you're coming back to your point. If you probably want to get at the next level, say expertise message to a set of CXOs,
Hmm.
for example, CFOs, or in this case, maybe CMOs. You want to talk to them about how you will be able to drive better outcome for them by using Gen AI, or
Hmm.
other new cutting edge technologies. So maybe you create a small roundtable with another expert in the field who they would listen to. Maybe a subject matter experts like a prof or a thought leader or a specific firm who has listening in that space, and then you patch your message with it,
Hmm.
right? So the person being there rubs off onto your brand, and you are able to follow it up now that you know what is the latest and the greatest. Here I am, which can help you do it here in your context, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So so the two things can come together. Now that event may
Right.
now you look at your audience, and maybe these audience are not easily available, so you probably want to pick a place that is convenient. You want to pick a time. For example, maybe the timing when they are going to work for breakfast in a city is better than doing evening thing. People are more protective of their evening time, right?
Yeah.
So you pick that, and then you can maybe pair it with something nice which they might enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be another format of doing an event. And then the other, of course, can be maybe you are addressing small and medium businesses, and you have a volume product or a volume service. So you might do a roadshow, multi-city. So like you
Understood.
mentioned SAP, we did a technology show on a bus, which would go to multiple industrial areas, multiple cities, and you could do real life demos and things like that. So again, it's a tool to do something. And now with
Hmm.
technology and so many new experiential things available, there is so much innovation happening in events. But when you are physically got somebody with you in the same space captive, you can engage all their senses, and you can get their attention, which you will not get over a digital medium, because they'll probably be doing something else, or they get interrupted and so on and so forth. So there is value in getting that physical presence, but it's also important that you use that opportunity to actually engage them. So many times, you do big event, and then people are running here, there, they can't find half the things. Food is not okay. Registration has a problem. They are not doing justice to spending the time effort. So therefore, your objective and ROI, what you want out of it, has to be discussed and decided before you decide an event. And then it's easy, because then you can measure against it. If your objective was, I'll get 50 top decision makers and their experience should be wow, you can poll them and find out. But if your experience was, I am going to 50 cities, I want to engage these people, and I want to get 30% of them interested enough to talk to me back again, you can use that as a metric. Or you can say, these CFOs or these CMOs, I want to get three of them to come back to me and say, I'd like to know more. That'll probably happen at the round table only. So good enough, they'll say, oh, let's meet next week or something like that. Which your ton of emails or social media may lead to, but may not do. Again, it's a multi-touch
Correct.
world. There's no one thing that will do. Multiple of these things will come together and help achieve your objective, and you can refine the mix.
Superb. I see a pattern, where you keep on mentioning before you start any activity, you have to be very clear as to what you want out of it. I think so often, especially young companies, just jump at it. This whole move fast, break things strategy, but it's something which doesn't work that well. Is what I've realized. If you're not very sure where you want to go, and I think that those are actually some difficult questions to answer, which a lot of people can't. And I
Yeah,
think this
I
whole
yeah, I would say, even if you're not like super sure, but I think thinking through and knowing I'm 50% sure, I'm testing it out. And therefore, when I
yeah.
measure at the end, I have to be mindful that I'm only half sure I was testing this. Because
Mm.
otherwise, the person who's doing it gets thrown under the bus in a room where nobody else knows
Correct.
the answer as well.
Yeah. That's so true. That brings me to a question. In B2B enterprise companies, what comes first? Is it marketing or is it sales? Because when you look at productizing your solution, or rather just coming up with a solution, pricing the solution, figuring out the go to market for it, in B2B, like sales is usually what is going on, and marketing usually says mujhe ek saal do, forget it till then. So people are pretty people think it's very risky, that I'll be able to only measure at a long tail. So if I'm a company, if I'm a founder, right, and I'm into, let's say, enterprise products or B2B, what comes first? Is it investing into sales, or is it investing into marketing?
Look, I don't think it's a either or, but historically, the malaise is that B2B companies have thought exactly in the manner you mentioned. They've said, let's do sales first, then we'll figure out the rest. So marketing has been an afterthought. So today, if you ask me, sales is the leading function, and and that's fine. And marketing tends to be the following function, because also in B2C, most of the time, sales is distribution. Sales put products on the shelf, whereas in B2B, sales sells, in the field one to one. Right. To that extent, the nature of sales is very different in both. Now you mentioned the startup situation. I think marketing is a fairly strategic function when you are thinking of your product or go to market strategy, or how you want to use the marketing. So it's the same question. People will go to an agency and say, run some social media for me, make some website for me. Whereas the question really is that, where is your market? Which market, which
Mm.
audience, where does your product fit in? Who are you competing with? Therefore, what is your positioning of the product? Why will they
Mm.
buy you? And then from there, a lot of things flow, right? So that's
Right.
a core function where somebody, I mean, it doesn't need to be anyone, but the marketing thought has to be there. To me, marketing is the CEO's function. It's a strategic partner to the CEO. Sales is out there selling. Sales is a more shorter term function. Marketing is a mid to long
Mm.
term function. So even if they don't have a team, rather than hiring lots of people doing lots of activities, they should get counsel of one person as a bouncing board, sounding board for what they are doing. So it's baked into their thinking, and they don't try to do course correct later. है हमने तो गलत product बना दिया, इसकी जरूरत नहीं थी market में. And similarly, I think you'll see simple things like any professional when you meet. What is the first thing? You first get a visual impression of that person, and that's somewhere you peg, even you have spoken a word even before you met them. So many startups or new companies coming in don't do a professional job of presenting themselves. You look at the quality of simple things like their visual design of their logo, their colors, their tagline, how their collateral is designed. It's like very homemade. So
Right.
how are you going to then position yourself as a super finessed, Fortune 500 technology solution if the stuff that you show sends like it was made last night, handwriting? And
Right.
challenge is these things cost, and you cannot see the result overnight. But over a period of time, the premium and the respect for your brand that you command counts. So I think it is a foundational investment that the startups specifically have to make if they are in for the long run, to differentiate them, to get price premium, to be memorable with their buyers, and the backstory of the startup, story of the founders, their persona, all are an inherent part of it. Because people buy people. People don't do business with inanimate logos. People do business with people they know, people they trust. So therefore, many founders themselves are shy. They are great at technology, but they're not public people, right? It's the cost of doing
Mm.
business. They have to,
Mm.
I mean, they don't have to be somebody else, they have to be themselves. But people have to see what they bring, why they believe, what do they stand for, why they even built the solution in the first place. Because you know they are what will drive the trust to bet their business on them, not those emails and performance marketing and so on and so forth. See, everybody in the value chain is interested in making money off you as a founder. They will sell you some paid media plan, they will sell you some SEO, they'll sell you some social media. But if you haven't, invested to think what do you want and why do you want, it probably won't bring you result. So I think this missing piece between getting help from agencies and doing activities is somebody who can do the strategic thought for them. So they need something like that. And nowadays, a lot of, I mean, I'm myself on that path. Um, Getting a fractional help is a useful idea. Even if you're
Mm.
a small startup, have somebody engage with you one day a week for 3 months, 6 months, to get your basic foundational thinking. You may say, I can't afford it right now, I'll do it in 6 months. But you're not unaware. And then say, oh, why is not working? Right. So something like that. Am I?
Rajesh, sorry to interrupt, but very intrigued by the fractional CMO aspect, right? I think I have consistently seen a lot of top operators, hopping into that. How does something like that work, right? I mean, obviously, getting a fractional time of somebody very senior is cost effective, but I may feel, hey, if I am doing like a top down, um would it be wise for me to have a leader come in who is only here for us a short period of time and then will leave? Shouldn't I rather invest in somebody who will build my function over the next 5 years? So what is it, when is it that you think somebody should get a fractional CMO on board, and what generally are the core objectives of the fractional CMO in that short time period when they are here?
See, firstly, it's not either or, right? Because so fractional CMO typically is a part of your leadership team. So they are not a consultant. So they are not there for a project. They are not an outside advisor. In that sense, they have skin in the game, right? It's just that they are not available to you all the time. Maybe they're available to a day in a week, right? But I'm assuming you're not doing all 5 days a week strategic work on marketing, right? One day may
Right.
be enough. Right? But before you hire a fractional CMO, you also have to make a decision to invest in marketing, because what they tell you will mean investing in building your brand, maybe building your thought leadership, hiring the right type of people, and doing those activities which will again cost money. Right? So I think the role of fractional CMO is to help you translate your business vision or business goals into what needs to be done from a marketing perspective strategically. They help you translate business into marketing strategy, right? And then help you connect the dots on how will you make it happen. Helping you shortcut the way to right talent in the market, right agencies in the market, right experts in the market, and then help oversee it. Because you see, as a startup, you will hire people who do not have that level of expertise. So they fill
Mhm.
that gap between the founder, CEO, and the team. It's all that you're doing is that you're not hiring their time for execution, because you can have the other team and gradually team will scale. So it's like a build, operate, transfer type of approach. So
Got
I
it.
think that
Got it.
is what in my mind fractional CMO is.
I love the build, operate, transfer. I think that sums up your job really, really well. And on this whole fractional aspect, I have built a business model based on this thesis that you could get fractional time of an independent person or even an agency for some of your work orders. And we spoke about this content creation, right? If I'm a company today, what do you recommend? Do I build an in-house function, because I see a lot of companies doing that in creative, or is it that I outsource it to an agency? Because even that's something a lot of people do. So when to insource, when to outsource? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I have. I think my first way of thinking is that you have to work with agencies and people specifically who can make what you believe or what your strategy or what your vision is come to life better than you can. They can raise the bar on what you believe or what you want them to do. So you have to get the right people or the best people that you believe or best people you can afford in some cases, right? So you have to have agency that is vocal. You have to have agency who has a point of view, agency who will not say yes to everything, who will not blindly agree to a zillion things. And it's a mind shift. It's not easy, right?
Mhm.
To building in-house versus, I think, things that are strategically important and a source of competitive advantage or competitive risk, you should have in-house. Everything else should be outside. But to even see, but it doesn't work. So like you say, you can delegate, you cannot abdicate. to work with a good agency, you need one good person inside who can understand what agency is delivering, who can brief them properly, who can work with them. It's not like you put in a sausage machine that comes from the other side, especially in marketing. It's very iterative. It takes long time to
Right.
build that understanding with the agency, get the right thing. There are nuances and so on and so forth. So you actually need great people who can work with those agencies and get the great quality work out. So anything operational, I don't think you need to do in house. You can get it out. But people who can extract the best out of the agencies, people who can communicate with them, those people you need inside.
Great structure. I think, I work with a few clients who have something similar to what you mentioned, and it really is useful. Otherwise, you're always so far apart, and people are so busy in the brand side to even give clear briefs and direction, that you end up actually wasting time net, and it's like a lose-lose situation. But if there is somebody internally who gets that I'm working with an external partner and I have to over communicate, things become extremely smooth. So Rajesh, last question to you now, and I know we're almost at the end of our time. I, you know, I mean, we just spoke about FaceTime is so important. Having all senses leveraged usually leads to better sales, and that generally happens when you get that FaceTime. You said so. I know you've built global brands and you're very passionate about India building global brands. I also really aspire to take this into a creative outsourcing giant for the world in the coming decade or so. But how do I go about building a brand sitting in India? Right? I see like a TCS in B2B, they like sponsor some really expensive things, and they do really expensive ways to kind of do their go to market. Obviously, they are a billion, it's one of India's biggest companies. That's why they can afford to do it. But for a small company, how does somebody build a global brand? I've heard people saying you'll need a local team if you want to sell something. Some people say no, you can set out of your home and do it. Some people say that you have to think USA or global from day one. You can't build in India and then take the same thing to America. So many opinions flying around. As somebody who's been in Singapore, has tapped into multiple markets, is in India and has also built that in India. What do you think would be your advice, to anybody who's thinking to build a global company sitting out of the company? How to do that?
Look, everything is possible. There's nothing that is impossible, right? But you have to scope it. What is it that you want to do, and what are the boundaries of what you can bring to table to make that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of these things are at a high level, if I can say that. So it's about picking one area or a few things that you can be extraordinarily good at. I mean, it may sound like very bookish, but I think maybe you are the best in SEO, for example, or maybe you are the best in videos, or maybe you're the best in writing text or visual or something. I'm saying pick a few
Mm-hmm.
things which make you stand out, in the sense that earlier only the large was good. Now small, nimble is also a value people like.
Right.
So I think pick what you can promise and deliver, right? And then pick what your resources currently allow.
Mm-hmm.
And also a little bit lens for the mid to long haul rather than immediate. Or maybe it's like you segregate. You say this is for today, this will run separately. This is for tomorrow, which I will invest and build. It'll run separately because there may be existential balance that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then I think, just like we said, who just spend time to think that through. And a lot of these things are not rocket science. Just need you to probably step away from day to day and think. Say, if you are going to build a
Mm-hmm.
business in US, who is it going to come from? What type of companies? Who in those companies, maybe make. I mean, you already probably make few visits a year, meet a few people, and understand how do you decide where do you currently get it from, who's currently there, what will make you switch, If I were to do this, who will I be competing with? How do I get me myself in front of your peers and yourselves? So you could do based on network references, from talk to few people, go to some places people are there, like a marketing academy, or even see, if you think differently, you could actually go to a business school program and meet some of these people. These people may be there to learn something, but you may get like 7 days, 10 days time undivided with them. So that's your marketing.
Right.
You don't need to do ad campaign. You go invest time in,
Right.
say, a INSEAD program, or a Wharton program, and get time with some of these people. I think based on that, you start building it brick by brick, because it's about, see, larger companies can afford to waste, because some things don't go right, it's okay, and they have lots of people to throw at it. But for you to think through, who do I want to get, and then maybe the conclusion is that it's not workable,
Hmm.
right? So maybe the answer for you is to go scout there and find an agency which has a front end, but not getting sort of obsolete because of technology today. You find a partner, use their front end, use your back end, buy them out, or do some sort of a share swap or something. Sometimes you just have to make sort of decisions which are in your favor, rather than um, based on what seems there. Maybe that's the answer. you know because see, even hiring talent there isn't easy. Hiring people
Yeah.
isn't there easy, and then supervising, getting work out of them is not easy. How do you know they are even motivated or committed? Because you don't understand the
Right.
landscape, so you don't know you know anything better, right?
Right.
And India is still, hasn't built their brand externally. It's improved in last decade or so, but still, we are all industrial brands or back end
Right.
brand. We don't have a single front end brand which commands
True.
premium in the market. I mean, even our IT companies are all based on cost arbitrage and skill. Their equivalents from
Right.
the other, nations probably get twice, thrice the premium on them, right?
True.
So I think picking what you can do differentiated for some period of time, understanding who the business will come from, what will make them buy, and then how do you get that front end face time? Is it like in your thing, make, buy, collaborate, and then lace the two together? Because I think people are there also probably struggling to tackle to do what you are doing. So
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
it carry a different name, but or you buy them out. So things like that. I think it's a um, something like that in my mind on the face of it, uh, rather than one sweeping thing. Because marketing is also cultural
Yeah.
nuanced thing. So creativity is culturally
Yeah.
nuanced. So this is the whole
Correct.
idea of mass scale is not so useful in absence of that. But if you don't understand that culture, how would you sell to them? How will you market yourself to them? How to be a part of them? How do you get somebody whom they uh, depend on for something strategic? It's something to be thought of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, but I think you put up a nice framework once again on how to go about at least thinking of outside India. So thanks for that, Rajesh, and that's our time. I hope you had a good conversation and a good time.
Yes, yes. I always enjoy talking about all this stuff. Yeah. And I'm actually working on a book on B2B marketing, because I realized there aren't too many, so hopefully next few months there'll be something that captures
Amazing.
a lot of this and is useful to refer.
Amazing. Please, please, share that with us whenever it's ready. I'd love to spread the word with our network.
I
And
will.
everybody who's stuck along so far, folks, thanks a lot for your time as well. And if you'd like to hear another expert like Rajesh, do like, share, and subscribe. We'll have a new episode going live very, very soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.